You're listening to Booth Talk from the After Movie Diner, and on this episode, we're exceptionally happy to speak to actor, writer, and producer Robert Wuhl. You will know him from Batman, from Good Morning Vietnam, from Bull Durham, and also he was a writer on such great TV stuff as Police Squad, the original TV series, and the Billy Crystal Oscar specials, as well as his own show, Alice, which he wrote, produced, and starred in. We start off the interview talking about a film called Missing Pieces, which he co-starred in with Eric Idle, and which was the subject of an After Movie Diner podcast. So please go listen to the After Movie Diner podcast episode all about Missing Pieces to get some sort of context for the beginning of the interview. But otherwise, sit back and relax and enjoy this conversation with the always engaging Robert Wuhl. Thank you so much for doing this. Just a real pleasure to talk to you, and certainly thought that it would be interesting to talk about a film that I wonder if you've ever been asked about before, and that's Missing Pieces.
Have I ever? I think I've been asked once or twice. My sister saw it one time. Maybe somebody else saw it too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not much. No, well, and it kind of baffles me because I actually really like it. As a kid, I was a huge Monty Python fan, and that obviously extended to trying to pick up all their post-Python stuff as well. And that's how I came across it. It's obviously relatively obscure today, but I'm fascinated, therefore, about the story behind it, because whenever anything kind of, especially in this day and age of information everywhere, when there's not information about stuff, it just makes it all the more tantalizing. How did you end up working on the film?
It was post-Batman, and Aaron Russo, producer, who had produced The Rose, other films, he approached me and offered me the job, the idea of working with Eric Idle. And I obviously wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. I mean, that's I really didn't know that much about the script. I mean, it was basically, it was supposed to be like a Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello type of thing. And that was, I don't remember much about it. I remember that, I don't remember much about the script. It was something about some missing, the guy who directed it, Lawrence Stern.
Leonard Stern, yeah.
Lovely man. Great guy, terrific guy. He had done Get Smart, and he also was the creator, most importantly, of Mad Libs. I don't know. Are you familiar with Mad Libs? The old
I'm
stuff?
familiar with them. Yeah.
Yeah, that was him. He self-published it and made a fortune on that. So
wow, he invented that. I did not know that.
I believe he did. I believe he did. That fascinated me. I'm always fascinated by stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't know much about. There was some terrific talent in the picture. I had a great time. I mean, Leonard was a lovely guy. Like I said, really gentleman. Again, I don't remember much about the one scene. I thought being fun. I only saw a rough cut of it. I don't think I've ever seen the finished product.
Okay.
Here and of course, what was great about it is meeting Eric, and probably what I take away most about it is it started my relationship with Marvin Hamlish, who did the music. And we had a song, and I forgot what it was. It was sort of like High Hopes. It's a good song. High energy, whatever it is, yeah. So I like that. And I started a relationship with Marvin that continued. We worked together on a couple other projects and became very close friends. And so that was terrific. I loved the idea of working in New York. At the time, I wasn't living. I was like, I loved living in New York. At that, I have an apartment there now, but I liked that. There was one scene in a car. We were putting on seatbelts or something that I thought was pretty funny. The two of us did. I thought that was a good piece of physical comedy there.
It's he gets his car back from a garage in the city because they're about to drive out to LA. And he goes to put his seatbelt on and your seatbelt tightens. And then you go to put your seatbelt on and his seatbelt tightens. But the button to the scene is the funniest line because after you both eventually get your seatbelt on, I think you say something along the lines of, "Oh, he fixed the seatbelts then," and Eric says, "Yeah, they work much better than they used to," which is obviously the joke on the fact that they don't work at all. But no, there's some great little one-liners in there, and so Leonard, along with apparently creating Mad Libs, which I wasn't aware of, he had even worked on I think 2 of the later Abbott and Costello pictures back in the 50s. So he'd actually written stuff in this tradition before, and I wondered if that had come up or if that was even discussed on the set, or if
I do not remember. To be honest with you, I know he did Get Smart. I think he worked on I Love Lucy for many years.
Okay. And as a writer, you guys are both writers. Obviously you've done a lot of writing, both for. I was great to find out that you had written some for, or certainly script supervised for the Police Squad series, but also wrote for Billy Crystal's now famous Oscar nights, which go down in history now as the thing you're trying to reach, right? The pinnacle you're trying to get to in terms of comedic award hosting. And so I wondered, and again, you may not remember, but I wondered if you and Leonard kind of bonded on, Eric is obviously this phenomenal writer from Python as well, whether you guys bonded more as writers or more as performers.
Eric, I was more, I would try to push Leonard and question Leonard about stuff. And Eric would constantly remind me, be an actor. Be an actor.
Oh, okay.
Be an actor. And that was very good advice. Probably should have taken it better than I did. Aaron was a big figure, and Aaron could control Leonard. Leonard, that was the other thing. He could bully him around a bit. Leonard, like I said, is a great guy. He's a sweetheart of a guy. Old school, very old school. But funny. He was good. It was. Hey, I got an opportunity. Looking back on it, it was a great opportunity. I made a couple of bucks. Not many movies I got to co-star in. I got to work with Eric Idle. Got to know a little bit. I don't really know Eric that well. I haven't seen him that much since then. It's something that if you hadn't brought up, I wouldn't be thinking about much. Lauren Hutton was in the movie. I unfortunately forget the name of the woman who played my partner. I remember a couple of people from Get Smart were in it, and I would question him about things in the script, Leonard. I remember saying, "Wait a minute, what happened to this guy's gun? The bad guy's gun?" And Leonard said, "Well, he left it up there." And I said, "How is that possible?" I'm sure Leonard. I might have been.
And do you remember how much? Yeah. You were maybe asking too many questions. You obviously come from a stand-up improv background.
Not improv.
Not improv? Oh, okay. Sorry, that must be
when I say improv, I was never part of an improv troupe. In acting classes, you do improv. I would come up with lines. I come from a writer's point of view, and from I started as a writer and an actor, not improv groups. I'm not a Second City guy, I'm really not. I've done okay in them, but that's and I appreciate them because they're character based, and that's really what it's about. So, but not improv, really.
Not improv. Okay, no, but I was just going on to say more or less, maybe as a writer, or maybe, but with Eric, how much of those lines were written and how much Leonard kind of insisted on you kind of going by the book, or how much freedom you guys had to maybe bat a few ideas back and forth.
I'm sure we had freedom. Leonard was good about that. I'm sure he was good about that. Leonard could recognize good comedy. I mean, remember, he does come from all those shows, where, like, whether you say Abbott and Costello, Lucy Gets, where you had funny people. So there, obviously he could recognize contributions from other people and recognize when they're good and to use them. He did that. I mean, if you write for Abbott and Costello, if Abbott and Costello want to say something else, they're going to say something else.
Right, exactly.
But at the same time, if they could recognize something really well written, I mean, not much better piece of comedy ever written than Who's on First.
Right, exactly. And there's a little bit of that in this, just because I think the deceased foster father in this is called Chen Wu Hu, I think. And there's a
there was a who, what, when, where, why, something like that. Yeah.
Right. Kind of joke in it. Obviously you became great friends with Marvin, as you said. Do you remember the recording session? I know that Eric Idle is, he's a big musical guy. He sings a lot. Obviously, he wrote Spam a lot. Do you remember recording that song with him and what that was like in the studio?
Eric was not there when I recorded it. We recorded them separately.
Okay.
Yeah, but I do remember the recording session with Marvin because that was my first time with him, and I learned a lot, a whole lot. Yeah. And Eric sings better than I do. I can pass. Eric sings better.
You had the bravado. That's what I like. But there's a nice. It's surprising to me you weren't in the same room when you were doing it, because there's a wonderful kind of back and forth in the song.
My pal, alter ego, trouble seems to follow us wherever we go. When we're out of a jam, look out! Calamity. Your faith needs restoring. You're a bloody optimist, but never boring. Just when others say die, we kick it into high. 'Cause we've got high energy, and you bring out the beast in me. You're a pain that never ceases. You fill in the missing pieces. Woo! My energy is an infinite.
And likewise on screen, the two of you, and again, I don't know whether you did a lot of work on this or whether it just came naturally between comedians, but the two of you on screen, the movie works, if it works at all, because of the... No, I mean that in a positive way. It does work.
I know you do.
Yeah. I love it. I'm a big fan of it. I love
my sister loves it. My sister loves it.
Comedy films. But the friendship between you and Eric in the movie is kind of what holds the whole thing together. In fact, if anything kind of is an odd choice, it's the introduction of the females, because it doesn't happen until really late in the second half of the movie, and you're already invested in this friendship. Not that Lauren Hutton and the actresses aren't fantastic, but the friendship is what grounds it, I think. And you guys are great.
I think you're probably right. Now, first of all, where did you see it?
I saw it on VHS back in the UK years ago. As I said, I used to be a mad post-Python collector. And in the days that VHS was both very popular, but also slowly being taken over by DVD, all these VHS pop-up stores, much like Halloween pop-up stores here in the US, because I'm now in New York. I've been in New York the last 12 years. But all these pop-up stores would open up, selling off kind of warehouse loads worth of VHS. And I was able to get Missing Pieces. I got Odd Job, which was a movie that Graham Chapman did that no one's ever heard of. I got a couple of others, like B-movies with Bruce Campbell in it that I'm a big fan of. So, yeah, I kind of got them in these sort of warehouse dumps that they would stick in these weird VHS pop-up stores in Guildford, England, of all places. So that's how I came across it.
I'm looking at I'm trying to find where could somebody watch this now. It says HBO video now. I'm just trying.
So what's weird, Robert, is we're doing an Eric Idle season as well as doing interviews. We also do a podcast and reviews and various other things from my website, aftermoviediner.com. And we're doing an Eric Idle season right now, which is where this movie came up and why I reached out to you and Eric to see if you wanted to talk about it. And within 5 days of us releasing our last episode, someone, and I don't know who, has uploaded Missing Pieces onto YouTube. So it is on YouTube now in 2 parts. It is there if you want to watch it.
I might do that one day. I mean, I generally don't. I'm just watching and seeing where it says we got 33% of Rotten Tomatoes, which is okay. A third of the people like it. So
I like it. I think it's right for rediscovery. I think it's up there with the kind of knockabout comedies. So I'm guessing then, in terms of the movie going into relative obscurity and only weirdos like me finding out about it, I guess you don't know. Yeah, no, I love it. I think it's awesome. But I guess you're not aware of kind of why it was kind of released and then forgotten about, or why it wasn't pushed more or anything like that. There's no kind of story behind that. You don't know.
I never got released. It was never released to theaters that I know of. I think it pretty much maybe a theater or two. I never remember it ever being released. I think it went straight to video.
Okay, so it's a straight to video kind of deal. And again, I don't think Eric Idle's been hugely complimentary about the movie, and I'm not quite sure why, because again, I've watched it 2 or 3 days ago and I love it. What are your feelings on it now? I know you don't like fully remember it, but sort of what are your feelings on it now, and are you intrigued enough by this conversation to go watch it again, I guess?
Usually my opinions stay the same when I go back. I remember the time with Eric. I enjoyed being with him. I don't think either of us thought the movie was going to be particularly good. It is amazing that, I'm looking at some of his reviews on people. People love it. I mean, here's one. It was 2002, an idiotic masterpiece.
That's a great description.
Yeah, masterpiece. Wow. It's something I got to do in my career, and I'm looking back. I should have been more thankful and fortunate. I guess maybe I was more consumed with making sure, hey, it's the first time I'm above the title in a movie, and I'm with Eric Idle. We want it to succeed. You really do. It's a big thing, and so you're frustrated when it isn't. And maybe I was frustrated. Eric is a good guy. He's a terrific guy. I have nothing but wonderful things to say about him. And
obviously people like sort of Richard Belzer, who I know was obviously a stand-up as well, and there's a lot of New York comedic character actors in there. Did you bring any of those guys in? Did you know those guys?
Well, I was Russo. That was all Aaron Russo.
Nice. Okay. And so, like I mentioned earlier, you did some script work on the original Police Squad and Billy Crystal's Oscar shows, as well as your successful show Arliss and various other things. Do you consider yourself a writer first? Is it still the thing that you're most happy about or most love? Or were you always trying to kind of break into acting through kind of the comedy and the writing? Was it always to facilitate the acting or the other way around?
Well, I was always a writer, and I had direct acting background from drama class in college, and college is class. And I had a great acting class. And my class had Dennis Quaid and Brett Cullen. We were college classmates, and before me, Randy Quaid, Cindy Pickett, Tommy Toon, some really talented people. So I always had that. I always loved structure. At the same time, I loved storytelling. I've always loved storytelling. Yeah. So, and I love comedy, especially, I love the old comedies. I like the structure of them.
Yeah.
The craftsmanship. I love a well-written story. I love a great narrative. I really do. I miss the narrative more than anything else. Most of the projects I see today are, with rare exceptions, especially in movies, especially in theatrical films, the narrative stinks. They're about, in fact, directors today, as somebody pointed out, they're not storytellers, they're shooters. And I would agree with that in most examples. I think there are exceptions. I think what's his name? Tom McCarthy, is that his name, who did Spotlight? And Alexander Payne is another one. Jason Reitman is another one.
Those are great examples.
I really like their work. Spielberg is basically a storyteller. I would agree with that. But you don't have to be a great storyteller to be a great director at all. I mean, Tim Burton, who there's nobody I like more than Tim. Tim is an artist. He's a visual stylist. He'll tell you the first thing. He don't know a thing about story. He'll be the first one to tell you that.
So obviously I was going to ask you about Batman, so that's a wonderful segue for you to bring that up. But yeah, it's true. And even when you look at the comedic guys today, there's lots of very funny people working. There's not a lot of very structured, funny writers working. The improv has taken over to a point where it's not that it isn't funny. It's just that at a certain point, you need something to hang the funny onto. I remember Jon Cleese, weirdly enough, bringing up another Python guy. He's famously all about structure and very focused on the writing structure. And he said, we did tests and an audience can laugh for about 45 minutes. And then after that, they need something more than just joke after joke after joke after joke after joke. It's why something like Four Weddings and a Funeral work, because you have two funny weddings, then a funeral, and then the funny ending. You know what I mean? You have that moment after 45 minutes where people can kind of breathe, catch their breath, get involved in the characters, and move on to the third act. And I think a lot of comedies today, while, I certainly watch them and find them funny.
I am a big... I totally agree about what Jon Cleese says. I would underline everything he says. He's 100% right. And, of course, A Fish Called Wanda is a great example of that also. But that's a throwback to which was my love, which is going to sound funny coming from a kid from New Jersey, but I loved Ealing Studio comedies. I was a huge Ealing Studio fan. All those films like whatever it is, Whiskey Galore, and the Lavender
Kind Hearts and Coronets, and
all the Lady Killers. Those films are pretty, and all Heavens Above. The early Sellers stuff is truly I'm All Right, Jack, The Wrong Arm of the Law. That stuff is just they have stories and structure, and and look, there's no doubt Sellers. Well, when Sellers becomes Sellers, he's definitely improvising. I mean, I have, he's improvising in Kubrick films, which he's the only person that he ever allowed to do that. But
right.
But everybody's not Peter Sellers. I'm sorry, they're just not.
Yeah.
And even when he started to control and take over more, his films get shittier. I mean, if you really think about it, after Strangelove and Pink Panther, how many, and being there, but I'm not sure how much improvising he's doing on Being There. As much as I love Sellers, and I do, I was the biggest Sellers fan in the world. I love After the Fox. He doesn't make very good movies after the first, after the mid.
No,
he really doesn't. And
if you look at the
After the Fox, you know who the screenwriter is on After the Fox?
No, not off the top of my head.
It's Neil Simon.
Oh wow, really? No, I didn't know that.
It's his first screenplay. And I speaking with Neil at one time, he said, Sellers wanted to do it, and he was the biggest comedy star in the world, and he would only do it if Vittorio De Sica directed it because he loved Vittorio De Sica. But he said, I learned a lesson that never let anybody who does not speak your language direct a comedy, because De Sica had no idea it was funny. And he would and he would turn to Sellers all the time saying, is this funny? And Sellers would say yes.
You see the Pink Panther movies, one of the funniest ones is Shot in the Dark, and it's based on a play. It's got that structure. It's got
but that's an anomaly, because they had the rights to A Shot in the Dark, and the Pink Panther was coming out, and they knew they had this super hit on their hands, and they wanted to find something else for Sellers. So they basically it was not, and it was a police detective, so they just substituted Sellers as Clouseau into A Shot in the Dark. So, they already had the structure there, but it wasn't a Pink Panther movie. It just happened to be that they just put the character in there.
But if you look through that franchise, as that franchise goes on, and Peter Sellers overwhelms Blake Edwards almost as it goes on. Correct. You're right. They become less and less because they have less structure. It's just like there's a bad guy, there's Clouseau, and not that I don't laugh at them, but they're not. They don't continue quite in that vein. But going back to Tim Burton and Batman, was that sort of and I don't know exactly, but was that one of your first kind of, oh my God, I'm on a big, huge studio set with Tim Burton and Jack Nicholson and yeah.
I mean, I had done a couple of movies. No, I had done Good Morning Vietnam and Bull Durham beforehand, but neither was the scope of Batman. Of course, nothing was the scope of Batman.
Right.
You know, Batman at that point is the biggest movie ever made. It's the most expensive movie probably ever made.
Yeah, it's like Cleopatra, but for a superhero movie, it's like this huge thing on film sets. Is it all on set? There was no location, right? It was all on set for Batman. Was it all built in-house?
We had a couple of practicals. No, we did. Okay. We went to a castle for the somebody's castle for the big party scene. There were a few practicals.
Okay. But what was it? I mean, what was it like, kind of, as I say, being on that set and especially working with someone like Tim, as you say, more focused on the art potentially than the story, but then also being surrounded by.
It's not that he's not interested in it. I don't want to make that clear. It's not that he's not interested in the story. He does. But his strength is not.
No, it's the visuals.
It's style. He's
the world.
He loves story. He loves stuff like that. He loves character. But Tim's strength is visual.
Yeah, and of course, you and Keaton both come out of the comedy tradition. Even though obviously Keaton's playing it a little more straight in Batman. Did you have a lot of conversations with Keaton about kind of coming up through comedy, or what it was like him taking on Batman?
We knew each other briefly as stand-up comics. From the Comedy Store, but we didn't know each other that well, but we had conversations. We had a great time. Batman's special. Batman's on a lot of ways. Batman is it's a novel unto itself, what happened there. And I mean, there's so many things that happened that changed, we changed the leading actress on the first day of shooting. A lot of things change. I remember, and also Tim was constantly, at odds with John Peters, the producer. Remember, Tim Burton at this point isn't Tim Burton. He's done too much. But he's the right guy. Absolutely, there is no Batman franchise without Tim Burton. He is. Tim Burton is the right genius at that time. I mean, he didn't want the Prince songs. That was shoehorned. That was shoved down his throat. But Warner Brothers had a deal with Prince. They had done Purple Rain, which was a massive hit for them.
Yeah.
And they knew the importance of Prince. So, but to his immense credit, Tim found a way to make it work, and that's a great thing for a director. He found. A lot of directors, are given stuff that they don't necessarily believe in, or like, and they can't find a way to make it work. Tim did. Maybe that's higher praise, maybe, than anything.
Well, I mean, one of the striking images in it that comes to mind when I think of the Prince music in Batman is Jack Nicholson's entrance into the restaurant where he's going to meet Kim Basinger, and he's dancing to the boombox or whatever it is with as he comes in, and just his outfit and Jack being Jack and everything, coupled with Burton's direction and Prince's music. It's kind of a wonderful synergy that happens again, of course, in the finale when he's going down on the floats and is dancing again. It's a fantastic.
There are so many great artists. I mean, Bob Ringwood's set, not Bob Ringwood's set, Bob Ringwood's costumes, Anton Furst's sets. I mean, I remember going to Pinewood Studios the first time and seeing Gotham City. And wow. I mean, it was something to see. I mean, that was a great, it was not, as a film lover, it was really terrific. I mean, and it was big. It was big.
Well, it's the details in those movies. I mean, we just went back and watched it recently because I think with obviously the now expanded DC universe and all of that, they've they've remastered it at 4K, ultra high def, the whole bit. And we were watching it recently on our big TV in the living room. And yeah, all those details, the details of the sets, the details of the costumes, the details in the performance, all of that just comes through today, especially. And you miss it on these, not wanting to sound old, but you definitely miss it on the CGI backgrounds. You don't get quite the texture and the context that you do with a nice big built stage. You mentioned earlier Good Morning Vietnam. I would love to just talk about that. Obviously, weird connection. Robin and Eric were good friends,
yes.
Interestingly enough. But you worked on that, and I mean, my goodness, talk about improv, but within a structure. Robin's improv there. I don't know anyone else who could improv about the Vietnam War 20 years after he was meant to be in it. But just a fantastic film. What was it like working on that and shooting that and working with Robin?
Well, you hit on the correct thing. When I first read the script, and I was up for a part in it, and I knew with Barry Levinson directing.
Yeah.
What struck me was, now Robin had not had a hit at this point. Robin had not had a big motion picture hit. He'd done Popeye, and where he's good in the movie's not very good. Right. And he had done a couple of other ones, but nothing had taken off yet.
Had he done Garp yet? I forget if he'd done Garp.
Oh, is Garp before or after this?
That I'll have to look.
Garp was not a major hit.
No.
Garp was not a big box office hit.
No, I don't believe so.
In fact, by the way, I also auditioned for Garp. But,
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but when I read the script, I was 100% sure this is going to work. Now, I didn't know how big it would work, but I said, this is going to work because there you had improv, but it was in a structure. The screenplay structure worked. So the moment if you think of it as a musical, you had all this great structure, and then came the improvs on the radio. If you think of those as musical numbers.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's a great example. Yeah,
if you think of those as songs and musical numbers, that's terrific. And it had a great heart. And no, I knew that, and we were out there, and great cast, great direction. That was a terrific time. So I was really very fortunate at that period with those three movies.
And where did you film that? Was that the Philippines? Did you film that in the Philippines? Where was that filmed? Thailand. Okay, yeah. Sorry, the Philippines were used for Vietnam a lot in various other films. I just wondered if this was as well. Okay,
that comes out in 87. So we filmed it, I think, earlier in 87.
Yeah, and it's just the musical comparison works perfectly, especially, set in the 60s with that great, American and Motown soundtrack that you have going there. And throw that music, Robin Williams, great supporting cast. I mean, just the character actors that work on Good Morning Vietnam, just phenomenal. A great ensemble. And so, yeah, just a joy. I mean, I have to say, my introduction to yourself as an actor was Good Morning Vietnam, because I was such a comedy nut. I probably watched that before I watched Batman, weirdly enough, even though Batman was probably aimed at people of my age at the time. I actually, Good Morning Vietnam is when I remember your character, because I remember your joke about the Beach Boys, where you try and do a joke about Beach Boys about something like they're still on the beach and they're not going to be back until September or something like that. I forget. There's like a line in it, but I remember you saying that.
I believe that was a written line. That was That was in the script.
Because I like how your character in Good Morning Vietnam is almost trying to compete with Robin in a weird way, like I'm funny too, kind of thing. And it's a nice dynamic with the I'm going to forget JT Walsh's sort of stern, guy running the radio station.
Bruno.
But the last question I have for you, if it's okay, is I also watched the Assume the Positions that you did back when they first came out. Loved those, thought they were great. Any plans to do any more? I've got to think that with current American history, we could do with a history lesson of where it all comes from.
Right. HBO has no desire to do it.
Oh, okay.
It was unfortunate. Does not mean it can't be done, though. So we have to find, the money. We had stop start about 3 times on these things. Okay. And we have all the material ready to go. I mean, I've had this for about 8 years now. So, and I do enjoy doing them a lot. I thought it was different. They're difficult. They're time consuming, but I thank you so much because they're very close to my heart that you assumed the positions. So they were so different. Then they started, I mean, everything you see, I mean, drunk history and all this stuff, were all started because of that. They all started because of that.
And I love it because I am a firm believer, and it stands, obviously it is the case, but you don't have to believe in it. It just is fact. But, history repeats itself, and there's nothing so weird and funny as human nature through the ages. And again, just to wrap it back up with Python, when they talk about Holy Grail and Life of Brian, they're like, the same arguments went on thousands of years ago that are still going on now.
Of course they did.
Yeah, and that's where the humor comes from. So I love it.
The great line I used whenever we did the new one was from Aldous Huxley, who had a great line. He said, the charm of history lies in the fact that from generation to generation, nothing changes, and yet everything is completely different.
Yeah, that's a great line. That's a great line. My favorite is a Peter Cook line where he says, I've learned from my mistakes, and I'm sure I could repeat them exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's the little voice in the back of my head the whole time. But yeah, I love that. Well, look, thank you so much for talking to us today, Robert. That's a real pleasure. Thank you so much. Let people know what you're up to now, if anything at all, if they can look for you on video on demand or anything.
I live through the day.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, now I'm putting stories together. Actually, I'm actually just by myself. Everybody tells me all these stories I have that I should compile them into a book about Robin, about Batman, about all the people in my life that I've worked with and all the people who've come in contact, and Billy and the Oscars and his position. I mean, so that's what I'm starting to do.
Oh, that's great. Well, look, I'll pick that up the moment you publish it. But again, thank you so much for being on the show today. Take care now. Bye, sir.
Had a good time. Bye-bye.
Well, that was a fantastic conversation with Robert Wuhl there. I do hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. It always helps. Share, subscribe, rate, review, retweet, all that good stuff. It really does help. And don't forget to check out all our other interviews, either on the Booth Talk podcast feed or over at aftermoviediner.com. Thanks so much for listening.